Pests beware, your fields have heroes. The Pests and Predators podcast is brought to you by Field Heroes and is powered by the Western Grains Research Foundation. Learn how beneficial insects fight pests and protect your crops. Visit fieldheroes.ca today.
I'm Shaun Haney, and this is RealAg on the Weekend. Let's get real and get connected with the week that was in Canadian agriculture. RealAg on the Weekend starts now. Welcome to RealAg on the Weekend. I'm your host, Shaun Haney of RealAgriculture.com. Thanks so much for joining us here today. And speaking of RealAgriculture.com, I encourage you to go to our website and check out all the great stories and podcasts and videos from all the news and issues throughout the week that we're not able to squeeze into this show here on the weekend edition. And lots of stuff there. Also, hey, check out the Real Agriculture YouTube channel as well. If you do have any feedback on today's show, we'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also, of course, find Real Agriculture across all the different social media platforms, or why not call the RealAg feedback line? That number is 855-776-6147. You dial that number, press the number 1, and you leave me a message. Well, a little bit cooler this week on parts of the Western Canadian prairies. Warmed up here on the weekend, which is nice to see. Next week is temperatures are definitely going up. I looked at a number of different forecasts across Alberta and Saskatchewan and Manitoba, and things are looking a little bit warmer. So we're going to get a real launch out of the ground here with this crop. And for the most part, honestly, from farmers I talked to throughout the week, we could definitely use some more moisture, it seems, on a good broad base of the acres. More moisture needed. We're going to need those timely rains here. But the cool weather definitely slowed down some of that emergence. And I even heard of some pockets of Saskatchewan where the canola's been on the ground for like 3 weeks and it still has not come up. So there's definitely things to be thinking about agronomically. Okay, this week on the show, we're going to talk to Carlo Dade. He's with the University of Calgary in the School of Public Policy. They're launching a new project to better understand the Canada-U.S. relationship going forward. Instead of looking backwards and thinking about Canada-U.S. trade relations in a 1995 context, they want to put it in 2025, and there are some differences. The politics in America has changed, especially around trade and the economy, and we need to have updated information and be looking at it from a Canadian perspective a little bit differently. So Carlo's going to talk about that program. We've also got a special profitable practices for you. Now, this is a series that we have on that Real Agriculture YouTube channel I talked about, where we look at sustainable practices that are being implemented today, but through the lens of ROI, a return on investment. That is key. If we have practices that provide a positive return on investment for farmers and they're good for the environment, that's a win-win. Maybe even a win-win-win, because it's good for the farmer on both ends, plus it's good, obviously, for the environment as well. We're going to do a feature here with Amber Bell from Real Agriculture. She stops at Carl deConinck Smith's farm, and they talk about spot spraying. So we'll have a clip of that for you. We've also got Lisa Bishop-Spencer, who's the Executive Director with the Canadian Centre for Food Integrity. They're launching a new campaign to promote the safety and the quality of Canadian agricultural products to consumers. So for all of you that are listening across the cities, this is for you to really understand what some of the things that agriculture is doing to make sure that you have safe, high-quality, affordable food on your plate on a daily basis. And then we're going to finish off talking about what makes a top producer. We're going to have the editor of Top Producer Magazine, Margy Eckelkamp, with us. She was a recent guest on my Mind Your Farm Business podcast, sponsored by RBC Royal Bank. And we're going to play a clip, and then maybe we'll have a bit of a conversation about what makes that top producer. So lots of stuff to chat about here today on the show. Let's get to Carlo Dade. So Carlo Dade just moved over from the Canada West Foundation to the University of Calgary. And I had a chance to talk to him about the recent announcement. The province is all in on this. This is a big deal. Daniel Smith has, the Premier of Alberta, has really been promoting this at the big press conference last Friday. Known Carlo for a long time and the right person to lead this project. Let's hear more about it.
This is an idea that you heard this and a light bulb, I imagine, immediately went off. We've discussed this repeatedly on the show. the need for our ability to understand the new U.S. So we've seen what for Canadians are drastic changes in the U.S., the tariffs, the threats over the 51st state. We're seeing a U.S. that a lot of us don't recognize. Now, I'm American originally, so I recognize these things. But in Canada, it's coming as new to a lot of us. And this is causing a problem. Obviously, the tariff shocks on our economy, 88% of our exports in Alberta go to the U.S. Those tariff shocks are greater than any damage China has done to us. We're getting these surprises constantly, and we're on our back foot in terms of responding. We're not able to act proactively with the U.S. We're responding to shock after shock. So studying the relationship is what you would expect a university to do. But developing proactive solutions, applied research, is something else a university can do if pushed in that direction. And so that's what this initiative is. We want to develop understanding and connections to understand the new U.S., not the U.S. we all grew up with, the good old NAFTA, best friend in the world in the U.S., but understand the social, economic, and political changes of a new reality in the U.S., and then develop responses, new data, new connections, et cetera, to enable us, your listeners personally, and the businesses, government, to be able to better manage that relationship. And lastly, we also want to use this work to train the next generation of North Americanists. So we have new experts coming out of the universities that work with us that understand the new U.S., not just the U.S. that produced NAFTA, but can drive policy changes going forward.
Do you have a handle on how new is new? Like how much carryover, if we're going to put it in these simple terms, new and old, how much carryover is there of the old?
Wow, that's a great question. You're the first reporter to ask that. So good on you for digging in. But at the launch in Calgary, we had a roundtable with partners from the U.S. and other universities, including Chris Kuchar from down in Lethbridge. Jeff Hale was on the phone, also from Lethbridge. But that is the key question. A lot of what we're seeing in the U.S. are long-term trends that people who are deeply, deeply familiar with the U.S. recognize. Not just the changes in the Reagan Revolution or the Nixon administration, which imposed tariffs, but going back to the 50s, there's always been this undercurrent in the U.S. of the MAGA movement. What's different now is that those undercurrents have seized power, not just at the state level, like George Wallace in Alabama, but they seized the national levers of power. So trends that we could look on with alarm or bemusement in Canada have suddenly broken through the gates of power, and we're seeing them take over trade policy.
That was Carlo Dade of the University of Calgary. If you want to hear that full interview, you can go to RealAgriculture.com or download the RealAg Radio podcast. We'll be back with more of RealAg on the weekend right after this very quick break.
Pests beware, your fields have heroes. The Pests and Predators podcast is brought to you by Field Heroes and is powered by the Western Grains Research Foundation. Learn how beneficial insects fight pests and protect your crops. Visit fieldheroes.ca today.
Hi, I'm Bernard Tobin, host of the Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com. Throughout the year, on the Soybean School, we'll bring you timely agronomic video content from planting to harvest, from the latest agronomic research to the latest in production technology. Check out our massive video library on YouTube, RealAgriculture.com, or download the audio podcast versions wherever you get your podcasts. The Soybean School is brought to you by Mazik Seeds and Lalamon Plant Care.
If you're serious about agriculture, RealAg's got you covered.
For over 10 years, we've listened to and shared what producers have to say about everything from policy to agronomy from coast to coast.
Keep up with the latest in Canadian agriculture at RealAgriculture.com through daily newsletters and check out our YouTube channel.
Thanks for joining us in the RealAg community as we continue to cover and serve North American agriculture.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
One of the cool technologies that farmers are really excited about is See and Spray. This is the idea of not necessarily broadcast spraying with the sprayer across the entire field, but only applying herbicide where we need to. Now, there's brown on green and there's green on green. This technology is really evolving. So it's going to be really fascinating where it goes in the future. It's really in its infancy, but it's going to present a lot of opportunities from an efficiency, productivity, and return on investment standpoint. Never mind the benefits to the environment. On a recent Profitable Practices episode, Amber Bell of Real Agriculture had a chance to visit the Saskatchewan farm of Carlo deConinck Smith, who has been using this technology, and they had a conversation in the cab of the sprayer as he was going along through the field. Here's a portion of that conversation.
So as I'm along for this ride, talk to me a little bit about the weeded technology in your farm and how you got started on this.
Yeah, so we farm West Central Saskatchewan. We farm about 13,000 acres. We seed around 10,000 of cereals, canola, pulses. The weeded system we've had now for about 7 years. And the reason we got into that mainly was to be able to continue doing chem fallow the way that we want to and not have resistant weeds get away on us. And also to increase profitability on acres at times when we can use it to get some chemical savings and still kill the weeds that we're after.
And are you using this on all the acres?
We use it on probably about, well, it'll be 100% of the chem fallow acres. And we would use it typically full spot spray, probably about 25 to 30% of the acres, and the dual spray probably on another 25 to 30% of the acres, and then the balance would be a full spray of some sort.
Great. And let's talk about the technology itself, because you were mentioning earlier that it doesn't necessarily do a green on brown. So how does that work?
Yeah, so this the weeded system that I'm using currently, it does do the green on brown. So it's just sensing living plants, the weeded system, using light to detect the chlorophyll in living plants.
Right, and if there's a green piece of paper or something out there, it's not going to sense
Correct.
that?
Yeah, the weeded system, it's literally looking for chlorophyll, living plants. You could put a green piece of paper on the ground, it wouldn't spray that. Whereas a camera system is looking for the color green, it would spray a green piece of paper.
Okay, so let's talk about the profitability of this practice. What are you looking at for profit margin on it?
Yeah, so for us, be roughly a 3 to 4 year payback on the technology itself. And that really comes down from purely the chemical savings from year to year, and it does vary from year to year. So some years you'll use it a lot, some years you won't use it as much. It just seems to work out that the times that you do use it definitely make up the profitability for the years that you don't use it as much. This spring is a great example of a year where we're actually not using the spot spray nearly as much. We didn't have to do a fall spray last fall. It was a little bit drier. Had a lot of snow, good rain, early rains this spring. So it's created a lot of weed growth. So the right thing to do is just to do a full spray. And, of course, chemical costs are a lot lower. So it's just the right thing to do this spring, and probably this fall or next spring. You'll gain a lot of those savings back again by having the technology.
Right. And what makes for a good year where you are going to see a good return on it?
A good year is when you've had a good fall, with some rain. You do a fall spray in most of your acres. So you haven't got as many winter annuals there, just a few weeds, that happen to pop up early. And then you're in that 65 to as high as 90% saving rates, in that scenario.
And let's talk about the sustainability of the practice. So what are you looking at for sustainability, and how much of an impact has that made on your choice to use it on your farm?
Yeah, so the sustainability comes from, being able to get killing rates on the weeds, being able to use more water on the weeds without physically using more water per acre. And that's just allowing us to use just less chemical, and to create less resistance of the weeds. So, being sustainable for a longer period of time, and keeping our chemical tools that we have available to us.
So what all can this equipment sense? What is it looking for? What are you able to do with it that you might not be able to do with other pieces of equipment, or just by a straight spray?
Yeah, so obviously early in the spring, when there is just a few weeds or just patches of kochia along the outside, you can really target those very specifically with more product, and more expensive product. And in the fall, when you're targeting, maybe you've got some perennials like Canada thistle, some sow thistle, or grasses. You can target those. You can put 2 to 3 liters per acre on those patches, and realistically probably only using anywhere from a quarter to a half a liter an acre, as if you were full spraying, to achieve those rates on those specific patches of weeds. That would be kind of cost prohibitive now, to go spray 2 to 3 liters an acre on all your whole field for just a few patches.
Right. It's interesting looking at the displays there too, because you get to see exactly where it's sensing it, and you can compare that to what you're seeing on the ground.
Yeah, exactly. As you go over a specific patch, or you can watch the little graph will go up, showing you where those patches are, or how much it's actually spraying in that particular area.
So let's talk about accuracy. How accurate is it when you're out in the field?
Yeah, any weed that is the size of a dime or bigger, I would say 98, 99% accurate.
That's Amber Bell of Real Agriculture talking to Carl deConinck Smith, farmer from southern Saskatchewan. Carl's actually been using that technology for 7 years. Definitely on the leading edge of this one, and just so many opportunities for this technology going forward and where it goes into the future. So many benefits. Encourage you to check out the full episode at RealAgriculture.com or on the Real Agriculture YouTube channel. Some great visuals there, as well as they have the discussion right from the cab. And the Profitable Practices series is brought to you by RBC Royal Bank. We've got more coming up here on Real Ag on the Weekend. We'll be back right after this very quick break.
Farmers, trust is everything. Genesis Fertilizers is making real progress towards providing reliable, locally produced fertilizer. Join the ownership group and protect your bottom line. Learn more at genesisfertilizers.com/credibility.
RealAg Radio is Canada's only daily radio show focused on agriculture. Get expert advice on Agronomic Monday. Tuesdays and Wednesdays will cover a broad range of issues. Thursday we'll hear from farmers across the country on the Farmer Rapid Fire. And we'll wrap things up Fridays with the RealAg Issues panel with Kelvin Hepner and Lindsay Smith. Join us Monday through Friday at 4:30 Eastern, and don't forget about the replay at 7 in the morning on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Get all the information you need to keep your pulse crop healthy and profitable with the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School is a free YouTube video series covering agronomy, research, and more across a host of different pulse crops. It's also available as an audio podcast wherever you download or stream your favorite podcast. Check us out on YouTube or visit RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School, brought to you by BSF Canada. One of the press releases that came across my desk is Sask Barley has invested in the future of barley breeding with USask research expansion. So the Saskatchewan Barley Development Commission is proud to announce its support of the University of Saskatchewan's $11.8 million infrastructure expansion. The investment will enhance research capacity for the College of Agriculture and Bioresources and the world-renowned Crop Development Center, better known as the CDC. Sask Barley has invested $850,000 into the project, which includes the new Harrington plant growth facility and the soil science field facility, as well as the upgrades to the crop science field lab. These facilities will expand research and teaching capacity and enable year-round plant breeding and seed development for key crops, including barley. So big congratulations there to Sask Barley and the University of Saskatchewan. Quote here from Cody Glenn, who's chair of Sask Barley. Sask Barley is proud to support one of the most successful barley breeding programs in Canada. So there's some news for you on what's going on in terms of barley breeding in Saskatchewan. Okay, now we're going to get to a portion of the conversation that I had with Lisa Bishop Spencer, who is the executive director with the Canadian Centre for Food Integrity, talking about a new campaign that is really promoting the benefits of Canadian-produced ag goods to Canadians. Let's hear what she had to say.
Well, for some time now, we've been working on trying to address indifference in the food system, right? So our research at CCFI showed that we were having a fairly significant drop in confidence in the Canadian food system. And for some time now, we've been trying to mobilize a public awareness initiative aimed at really sort of just building that public trust. And then January happened, and we started to notice a whole lot of pro-Canadian sentiment happening. We thought this is a really good moment for us to leverage that and build something that covers the entire food system. So we've created something called Canada's Food System. It's an initiative, it's a public awareness initiative to elevate Canada's food system and agriculture to its rightful place as a core societal value compared to healthcare and education among Canadians, and really start to get people to engage with it and compel them to just help us sustain it and promote it and evolve it. So we're looking at sort of reversing the indifference, enhancing public trust, but really leveraging that pro-Canadian pride sentiment to ensure that the food system always stays prominent in the mind of consumers and policymakers and the general public.
And who are we promoting to? Is this a domestic campaign? Who's the target?
We, at this time, we're promoting among Canadians, right? We're really leveraging that message that people need to understand their food system a little bit better and really start to engage with it a little bit more. So it's really mostly Canadians at this point, although the campaign will continue to evolve and grow.
Yeah. Where's the gap? Like what are we trying to fill here where we could say, yep, move the needle, success?
Right. So right now, for instance, fewer than half of Canadians hold a positive view of Canada's food system. So that's a 7-point drop from the year before. We're hoping to provide a lift to that and really help that pessimism that had hit an all-time high last year because of a lack of confidence that the food system was going in the right direction. So we're trying to leverage those numbers really to build that kind of trust. What we've seen, our challenges have been that there's been a lack of sort of a clear unified message from across the sector that says, hey, Canadians, the food system is important and you need to pay attention. And there are different levels of understanding, and I would argue in many cases no level of understanding of the different parts of the value chain, right? There are people who think of farmers and they think of retail and they're not sure about the partners in between. They don't know the role that they play. And then, of course, there's just different levels of understanding of the food system. They don't understand the economic contribution when they think manufacturing. People kind of default to cars when they think about manufacturing in the news, when our food and beverage sector is the largest manufacturer in Canada. So it's just that lack of awareness that we're trying to address.
Are there regional differences in how people view Canada's food system? Are there, demographic, like ages, where things separate? Could talk about those.
Sure. So I can give you the best example that I can think of off the top of my head, and that has to do with just sort of online conversations. So at any given time, there are 38.5 million Canadian conversations happening online about any topic. What we do know is only 1.5 million are about the food system. So that's a very small percentage. What we do know about that 1.5 million is that 80% trust the food system. So that tells us that we have to get more people talking about it, because that gives us an opportunity to step in, address misinformation, and really start to bring people the understanding of the value of the food system. Of that 1.5 million, the vast majority are Gen X and boomers. And what we've learned through the research that we've been doing leading up to this campaign is that Gen X and boomers have far more influence over our primary shopper, who is the millennial mom, than anything we're putting out. So you think that they're the people who are the most in touch with the food system. So they're aware of things like recalls or information that's out there, and they're influencing their children. Don't buy those eggs, dear, there was a recall, right? So they're having so much influence that if we can teach them about the food system, then we're influencing the influencers. So that's sort of an initial target, and then we're broadening out to that broader population as well. Regional would be more urban versus rural divide. So we know already that there's an urban and rural divide, and that since 1921, the urban population has outpaced the rural populations, and that's led to just a different level of understanding. People thinking in some urban centers that their food comes from the grocery store and not understanding where it comes from and the work that goes into it.
Yeah, with such a small amount of the population actually working in the sector, those numbers are working against the industry as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And we need to think about things like jobs as well, right? That the Canadian Agriculture Human Resources Council did a study, and they asked Canadians, what do you think of when you think of a career in agriculture? And people said, well, that's farmer. So they went back out. They said, well, what else is there? And they said, that's a trick question. It's farmer. And so they don't understand that you can be a lawyer and work in agriculture. You can be an engineer and work in agriculture. There are so many career opportunities in the sector that if we can start promoting the people behind the system, then people can start to see themselves in the system.
Okay, so what does success look like?
Success looks like moving the needle on public trust. Right. So we've seen it in the forestry sector. They've done a concentrated campaign, and they've successfully leveraged the campaign in a few years to be able to get almost 80% of the Canadian population looking favorably upon the forestry sector. In a generation, even among the generation that thinks that if Amazon rainforest destruction is bad, then all forestry must be bad. But they've converted, they've changed that opinion. If we can start to change and move the needle and ensure that people have a better level of understanding of how it works, but also understand the importance of what we do, right? The high level of money that we bring into the GDP, the contributions that we make on an economic perspective, but more importantly on innovation.
That was a portion of my conversation with Lisa Bishop Spencer. Encourage you to go to the Real Ag Radio podcast and listen to that interview in its entirety, or at RealAgriculture.com. Important work there. We'll see what the results are of the campaign. We'll definitely check in with Lisa and see how they made out in a year or so and see how things are going. We'll be right back with more of Real Ag on the Weekend right after this.
Focusing on the future, the 112th Saskatchewan Stock Growers Association AGM and Convention is June 8th through 10th. Livestock producers, you're invited to cast your vote and take in the many seminars and guest speakers on the agenda at the Moose Jaw Exhibition Convention Center. Details at skstockgrowers.com. The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is a video series that showcases the latest in canola research and production agronomy. Learn from some of the best at your own pace through quick and timely producer-focused videos available on our YouTube channel. The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is the quickest way to keep up to date on all the latest in canola production. Boost your canola IQ with the Canola School, brought to you by BASF, and visit canolaschool.com.
I'm Lindsay Smith from RealAgriculture.com. Join me Monday nights for The Agronomists, a 1-hour live and interactive show broadcast across YouTube, Facebook, and X. Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, I host expert agronomists from all over the country to give you answers to some of the toughest agronomic questions. Join us live or catch the replay Tuesday morning. That's The Agronomists with me, Lindsay Smith, Monday nights live at 8 p.m. Eastern.
You know, the industry of agriculture and farming is really, it's an entrepreneur's game, right? And so a lot of the challenges that farmers face are really the challenges that entrepreneurs face. Succession, access to financing, ability to put together a strategic plan. It's kind of all hands on deck many times, long hours, not a lot of sleep. We all get it. Now, just like in other industries, there are exceptional farmers and there are farmers looking to really improve. And a whole bunch in the middle, right? Not every barber is really good at what they do. There's some really good ones and there's some ones that you probably wouldn't get a haircut for free. And so what's interesting is trying to figure out what are the characteristics, what are the qualities, the aspects of farmers that are not only having success, raising livestock or producing crops, but they're also profitable. And there can be a major difference. I remember one time MMP, the accounting firm, had said to me, if they look at their numbers across their client portfolio, you can have neighbors, people farming, they're farming side by side, a fence row in between them, and there's $100 an acre difference between those two farms. What are they doing? I remember I was doing a panel earlier this year in Kansas City, Missouri with Ad Farm, and I had a researcher from Kansas State University on the stage with me. And one of the things that he talked about, if you look at some of the data at Kansas State, they'll tell you that what really separates farmers is you look at two things, two line items. Money spent, capital spent on equipment, or expenses for repairs and maintenance. And how the farmer manages those two things will really give you an indication on the where they fit in this spectrum. So on a recent Mind Your Farm Business episode, which is a podcast where I interview farmers and experts all about business things tied around trying to help farmers mind their farm business. I think it's a really, really cool title. It is sponsored by RBC Royal Bank. And recently I had a discussion with Margy Eckelkamp, and she is the editor of Top Producer magazine. And so she focuses on this stuff. And caught up with Margy, and we talked about what are the characteristics of a top producer. And here's a portion of that conversation.
I like to say that we are looking for the aptitude and attitude of our top producers. So we have been doing the Top Producer Awards now for 25 years. We just marked our silver anniversary, if you will. And that started with the Top Producer of the Year Award. That award is really looking to recognize those who demonstrate excellence in the business of farming. And then we've also introduced two additional awards, one being the Women in Ag Award, really looking for a female leader from the industry, and then our Next Gen Award, which is looking for somebody under the age of 40 who's exhibiting those leadership and excellence in business attributes. So yes, I know a lot of folks, when they think of a top producer, that has to be somebody that's measured in the number of acres their farm or the number of animals that they have. But really, it's not about acres and animals. It's about aptitude and attitude.
Yeah, and what you mentioned, the farm crisis of the 80s being sort of the enabler of this concept. we're not quite in 80s territory right here in 2025. We got a lot of uncertainty. It kind of feels like what goes around comes around, and sort of maybe history repeating itself as far as the need to kind of focus in and hone in on what are the attitudes and the aptitudes of the top producers.
Well, and you mentioned those traits of our award winners, right? And I would really highlight that all of these individuals, all of these farm businesses have faced some kind of challenge, some kind of adversity, but the way in which they handled those situations can be inspirational for others. So if you, for example, watch the videos that we produce on our award winners, or you read the cover stories that we do in Top Producer Magazine, you will get that sense of these people have transformed a challenge and made it into an opportunity. And no doubt we are in a time of great uncertainty, and I'm bullish to think that we will have some positive transformations come out of this. These folks are aspirational as well, because so many of them have already conquered a mountain. And I think that's also a helpful example as farmers and ranchers who they may feel like they're out on islands, out where they live and where they conduct business. But this is a way to help create a network of folks who can bounce off ideas, can be like-minded for where they want their business to go. And I think that's really helpful as far as a steel sharpens steel approach.
They're a resilient lot, right? They've been through some stuff.
They've been through some stuff, and they're risk takers. One of the key facets that we ask of our awardees is to really highlight in their application their entrepreneurial spirit and what they have tried different in their farm business. One of our finalists this year, I said that they really are an idea factory disguised as a farm. They are able to interpret trends, maybe that's not on their farm, but how can their farm harness those opportunities?
And so maybe what kind of separates we'll use the verbiage, a good producer versus a top producer is, it's not about what you do in the good times. It's about how you deal with that adversity in the times that are a lot more challenging. For the cropping sector, it's kind of right now, right? For the beef sector, it was before now. It was the prior 10 years on the ranch. Do you agree with that? Is that kind of?
Oh, I say it is a great honor to share these stories. It is a great honor that these farmers and ranchers have trusted us to look as an outsider at their business, and it all have a panel of judges assess their performance. So yes, these are producers that are willing to take a risk, but also put themselves out there and maybe show some of their bumps and bruises where maybe they weren't as successful, but how they then took their farm or ranch to the next level. And so for sure, these are folks who have done things, but they're also willing to continue to try things. And you said it really well, Shaun. They are incredibly resilient.
That's Margy Eckelkamp, editor of the Top Producer Magazine, and highly encourage you, if you're interested, to check out that entire conversation. You can find it at mindyourfarmbusiness.com or at RealAgriculture.com or on our Real Agriculture YouTube channel. Really what separates the wheat from the chaff when it comes to farm management. Cool stuff indeed. We're out of time. Things move fast around here. I hope you have yourself a great week ahead. If you have any feedback, send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com, or, of course, call that RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. Thanks so much, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with RealAg on the weekend.